I want to talk about the intentional use of color in a space. If you're not familiar, there is a practice or a subject called color theory that can be looked at in a few different ways. Color theory, color psychology, that explains, most interestingly, explains the way our brains react to different colors. However, within color theory, there is a variety of nuance for the cultural implications of a color. So for example, we know psychologically the color red speeds up your heart rate, which makes you think less logically. So you're more prone to like impulse purchases, to overeating, things like that, which is why a lot of stores use red or restaurants use red when they want you to spend more money, or they'll use it for like sales. So even if it's like not really a good sale, the red makes you think like, oh, this is a great deal. But then within using the color red, like here in Western culture, red tends to be very much like passion and fiery, and it's very like bold, dominant color. But then you look at it in something like, say, Chinese culture, where red is a very lucky color. So there's room for nuance, obviously, within that. And color can really affect you significantly in your home, which is why there's, all sorts of different, like, paint this room this color to do this kind of guides out there. And some of it's fairly accurate. Like blue is a more calming color, especially in like desaturated and lighter tones. So it's not as good to paint your kitchen or your dining room blue because it might suppress your appetite unless, that's what you're going for. But having your kitchen or dining room be like a green or a red is more helpful for encouraging eating. Whereas you can use blue really helpfully in like maybe your bathroom or your bedroom, places where you want calmness, places where you go to kind of wind down maybe. But then you potentially run the risk of having every single room in your house be a different color, and it kind of feels like you're living in a weird patchwork of rooms that someone on TLC's Trading Spaces might have designed back in 2002. So there is a psychological principle that's been studied of your brain not really understanding that you're still in the same home when your home is the kind of place where you have lots of colors in every room, like different colors as you're walking through the house. So for example, my parents' house, it used to be when you first walked in the door, it was bright yellow. And to the left was my bedroom, which was green, like bright green and purple. And then to the right was the sunroom, which was also yellow. But then once you get past the sunroom, you walk into the kitchen, which is a different shade of green. And then you're in the living room, which is blue. And none of these colors had like the same saturation tone. They were like varying shades of brightness or lightness or depth. And it was truly jarring. And there was also so much yellow, which if you have an abundance of yellow, it can actually be something that makes you very anxious, which I was experiencing. And we ended up painted the kitchen like a significantly darker green than it already was, which really brought out some of the red in the cabinets because they have older oak cabinets from the 90s, and I think it was a really great compliment. And then we painted over the yellow with this like gray color that had some tones of blue and green to it, and it was a little bit lighter. It wasn't like millennial gray. It's more of like a kind of a steely, almost slate color that's got a lot of depth and dimension to it. And that complemented really well with the green because there's similar depths and there's similar levels of saturation. And then those both worked with the blue that was already in the living room, as far as saturation and cool tones. So it feels a lot more harmonious. My house that I live in now, on my own, everything is white. Every single room is white. And I have thought a lot about painting some of the different rooms, like the bedrooms. I've thought about painting, because the ceilings are so low here. I'm in a basement apartment. I know that if I were to paint either of the bedrooms, I should probably also paint the ceiling and the trim and just do like a full color wash in order to have it not feel disjointed. However, I have come to the conclusion that although I like the idea of painting different colors, I will not be doing that. Not because it's against my rental agreement or anything. I have painted in here before, but because I need to have that harmonious like feeling where my brain can understand that every single room I walk into in this house is all part of the same house, instead of like, oh, and now we're this color and it's this house, and now we're this color and it's this house. So I've been very intentional about that, and making sure that I have kind of a running theme of the types of furniture and decor that I like, which does tend to be very eclectic. So it's a lot easier, I think, to have that continuity. I've decided to also, like, blues and greens are just very much my favorite colors, and so those tend to be everywhere. So every room has some green in it. And then from there, like, strategically, I'm using color. So like these red chairs behind me, they look kind of orangey on the camera, but maybe that's just because I have my blue light filter. Anyway, those were a strategic choice because this room is the room where I do a lot of my creative work. It's the room where I spend the most time, like, working on ideas. I don't do my actual job work in here, and I don't do my, like, side hustle kind of job work, passion stuff here as often. But this is where I do, like, arts and crafts. This is where I do my reading. This is where I do my writing. This is probably the third video I've done in this space. So it's very much more my creative space. And because I am really sensitive to color, I know that I can't do a lot of red because it makes me very anxious, especially if it's like a brighter, warmer, more saturated red, or really just any warm, saturated color in general, even like bright pink. But because I can strategically use it to my advantage to have like a little bit of red, these burnt orangey red chairs have been really helpful as far as like having some sense of stimulation in this room. Also a little bit with my bookshelf, the way that I've organized it by color, that can be really helpful as well in order to use this space for the purpose that I want to use it for. I have chair rail throughout the apartment as well. I have thought about potentially painting the chair rail a different color in each room. To be determined, but also I probably won't, because then I'll feel like I need to paint the trim, and there are baseboard heaters in every room, and it's just, that's a lot of work and detail that I don't really feel like putting in. So it will probably just stay white. But using the same colors in my decor helps as well for it to feel really the same. But then I used a lot more green in one of the bedrooms and more purple in the other bedroom, just for kind of tranquility, to make things feel a little bit like, to keep them separate as bedrooms, but to make sure that they both feel like restful places. One's my bedroom and the other is the guest room, and my bedroom is the purple one and the guest room is green. And I wanted them to both in their own ways feel like little havens. But for me, like, my haven is different in terms of like how much furniture there is, how much wall decor, compared to like a space that I have set up for guests, because the person that's here most often is my sister, and I want this space to be like a relaxing space for her when she comes, because she's usually like taking a break from work and this is her vacation. And so the idea behind the guest room was to make it really like calming and tranquil and just really like almost a blank slate where you can kind of feel like you can disappear for a little while. The only room in this house I have painted is the bathroom. And I painted it white to match the rest of the house because the previous owners, my aunt and uncle owned this home, and I rent from my aunt and uncle, but the people that owned it before them had a thing for black. And so most of the home was black and white, and they painted the bathroom black. The bathroom has the same like 7.5-foot ceilings as everything else, except for over the tub. There's a garden tub along the back wall, and the ceilings there are like maybe 6.5 feet tall. And there's white tile. The floor is white tile, and the walls have a white tile wainscot, essentially, or like it may be a little bit higher than normal wainscot, like a little higher than halfway up the wall, and then the shower, the corner shower, is all white tile. But they had painted the walls above the tile and the ceiling itself black. That room has no natural light. There is a window in there, but it's on the north side of the house, which never gets any sunlight on the wall. So there's never any natural light coming through. There is lighting in there, and I have changed out bulbs to make it brighter, but like there's not a ton of lighting to really like brighten it up and make it feel light and airy on its own when it was black. So about 2 weeks after I moved in, I painted it, which was a process because I had to do, I think I ended up just doing 1 coat of primer, but I did about 3 coats of paint on top of that, and it was a paint primer mix, and it was like the second most high-end paint option. That I think it was like the Dynasty stuff by Behr, to make sure that it was like gonna give me full coverage. And even still, like I'm noticing spots where you can see it bleeding through, and it like you can tell that I did not get enough coverage in those 2 coats, 3 coats, however many coats it was. Anyway, that is the only room I have painted. And I'm not saying that every house should be all white. That's something that works really well in this space because there's not a lot of natural light. I have basement egress windows, so everything is pretty high up, close to the ceiling, and I don't know, they're all like maybe 2 feet tall. So I don't get much natural light in here. So having everything be white and having there be lots of lighting, both overhead and wall lighting, and then like table lamps, things like that, has been really helpful for making it feel a little less like a basement. I think that, you know, when you're in like a normal main level space, you can make the home really be pretty much any color, and you can really play around with color. And that's not to say that like you can't paint each room a different color, but there needs to be some sort of continuity as far as like with my parents' house, like the depth and the saturation. It's all cool tones, like that kind of thing. Otherwise, it really, like, it does make your brain think that you're in different homes. And it's much more restful for our bodies if we recognize our home as one space instead of like instead of thinking it's like multiple homes, because then it kind of, especially if you're neurodivergent, that constant change of space can be really stressful on your nervous system. Yeah. So this is not to say that you should paint your entire home white, but this is to say that you should have some sort of continuity of color, and then from there strategically use accent colors in spaces to their advantage. That's all I want to talk about today. Yeah.